It looks down on me, its face so similar to ours, yet not. The light that shines and illuminates, he and I, and the board I am on. The utensils on the myriad racks behind us, around us. They glisten. All are of different sizes, metals, shapes, designs. Some are delicate, exquisite, one might say. Others look cruel and heavy and terrible. But all are sharp, and all glisten with reflected light. Racks run for as far as I can see, well into the darkness and beyond, like a huge warehouse of equipment where no two things are contained that are the same. And we are at its center. Above us is darkness, but I can feel things swaying, perhaps hanging just outside the light, perhaps hundreds of meters above. It is impossible to tell. But I can hear the creak of chains, the slight grinding of metal on metal, rust spitting down on each other. I can almost feel anticipation emanating from the darkness, like a wave of excitement. Or is it hunger? We have an audience. But if that is so, then I am the main attraction. It would be a first. All of my existence I have been nothing. From my time of first breath to the moment it all, I had thought at the time, ended. Nothing. I was a menial in a huge, choked jungle of plasteel concrete and doors. Always doors. Metal walls, metal floors, metal skies, metal dreams, metal existence. Metal and stone. One of the pointless, thankless, teeming billions of a hive. Each day is a toil. Each night is tiredness, not even begun to be scratched by the limited hours we are permitted to rest. It seeps into you until you are always tired. Never time for what someone might call recreation. What is that in the hive? If you do not work, you are sent to the queues. Nobody says it, but we all know. For all who join the queues stand, occasionally slouch a few paces, then stand again. But when they reach the gates to the processing plant, there is no seeing them again. Yet trailers full of corpse starch come out the other end. I saw them once when I was young, when I managed to get through one of the doors, hiding from sight behind the crowds who went through one way or the other, but only once. And none believed me. Not because they did not believe, I think, but because they did not wish to know. None did. So in time, I stopped talking about it to anyone. As later I came to find out that all knew. We just did not talk about it. To think that the conclusion of our days of endless toil, endless suffering were for nothing. That there was no reward at its end, but to shuffle one last time towards a place that would make us into the meal of the morrow. Better to never think about it. But that was then, when we were free, citizens of the Imperium of mankind. Yesterday, before the assault, before the Night of Terrors. The night I was taken by the evil ones, the Xenos. The ones who came to take us. The ones who herded us through the habs, through the runs and tunnels, who slew any who resisted, slew many who did not, and merely cackled like demented jesters. They were like stretched people, like a mirror room of magic, where the fat become thin and the short become tall. These things. They could look beautiful and terrible all in the same moment. When they moved, it was a blur, a dream made real. They just appeared and darted around us so fast none could truly see them move. And it was over. Like a nightmare. It happened so fast. Happened so thoroughly. I saw the endless ships they brought down, the lines of us that were being herded towards shimmering holes in the space, like doorways into the realms of dreams. Always doorways. And I was pushed through one eventually. Resistance was futile and final. And after all, what could I be scared of? Because when it came down to it, I was nothing. I am nothing. And could there really be anything worse than that which we already faced every day? The death of dreams, the death of hope, the slow deterioration of our bodies as we were ground down by long hours, little food and no reason at all to continue. Nothing to aspire to, nowhere to escape. So when these stretched men and women, these aliens who looked so much like us when at rest, when still, when they pushed me through the tear in reality into the light, I did not go with trepidation, but expectation. Because what could be worse than being nothing? I could not have known. And here I am, strapped to a board, immobile. Like a maestro of some orchestra, the thing above me elegantly bows to the darkness above, around us, the silent shadow. He indicates with a flourish of his hands, so many, that he is about to begin. For all the world, if I had not been at the centre stage, I would have been enwrapped, and as excited at the promised spectacle as any who may be watching now. He was so elegant, despite his terrible visage. So terrible. I felt like I was in the presence of a dark performer, who played to the gods themselves, if he were not one. At this thought, his head snapped up, its eyes full on mine, those terrible eyes. He moved toward me, but there was no sound of steps, no movement or swaying in him. 'Twas as if he simply glided toward me. I could not move my head to look down over the edge of the elaborate slab I was on to confirm whether he levitated, or if some other force kept him from the ground, for nothing that walks moves so cleanly, so smoothly. Nothing. But as he closed, his mouth opened, and out came a language I understood. How? The Xenos are animals, is what I knew, what I had been told. Yet this one moved like a ghost, like an apparition, and spoke as we. No, worm. You were right before you were right. You do indeed lay in the presence of a dark performer, and as you felt so rightly, you lay in the presence of a god. Me. I shall perform a transaction possible only to the divine. For I now tear back the veil. I shall slip my hand into the very mouth of eternity, of finality, of death. And I shall drag out the beings I've deigned to save from its maw, from its hunger. And the only coin I require, the only fuel for my alchemy, my miracle, is the most base and useless material the universe knows of, the dregs of reality that nobody wishes existed, and never will any mourn. Its eyes encompass me entirely. I drown in its sparkling pools as it nods its head to me and smiles a terrible rictus grin and says, You. We will go on a journey together. You will walk in the footsteps of Titans, will be shown all of the wonders that I have accrued over my near-endless existence. All this I will do for you, to you, so they may live, so they may breathe again. He looks up at this, into the darkness above us. For they have paid the ferryman, as your people would say, and I shall bring them back across the rivers of night to my side, and then back out into the great city, the sempiternal city, the dark city of Cormora. But our journey, it shall be long. It shall be glorious. You will experience more in these days and weeks than even the accumulated memory of your entire race can fathom. It will be without compare. For I am, as you so rightly identified, so quickly grasped, a god amongst mortals. I am so far beyond anything you can presently imagine that it is truly a gift to share this with you. I am not sure you are worthy, but we shall discern this on the trek together. Forever together. You will live out the last of your existence in my presence, so blessed art thou. While I work, while I perform my opus on your body, in your body, on your mind, in your soul, I will enlighten you. I will raise you up. I shall sing you a lullaby without end, for your life shall conclude for ere it will. For I shall sing thee the tale of what some call the fall, which we call, well, inevitability, evolution, apotheosis. I will make your senses sing, your every nerve and neuron flare with the most incandescent of experiences. I will allow you to flee, and catch you again, time and time again. I will send dark things to fill your mind while I take your eyes out still functioning, then place them at a vantage point so you can see me unbind and rebind your body again and again. Sometimes I will allow you to experience each slice, each caress, each movement as it occurs. At other times I will deny you the reality of the experience while you witness it, then have it all crash down onto you in a nanosecond as I reattach your eyes, like the pain the sensation was held in your eyes, the mirrors of the soul. I will make you kill your loved ones, those who are here or so. You think there are none, but you forget the faces you have seen all your life, the ones that are etched on to your existence, your mind. They are all here also, and I have found them all. The one you thought yourself enamored with a year ago, the one who you first coupled with, the one who looked somewhat like she who gave you birth. I have read your mind, sifted your thoughts and memories, have located them all. No, there is no warp here. I am no psyker. I do not need such tricks. But what we can do with neuroscience, with our merest trinkets, you will equate to the deepest of magics. So far above you we are. And we shall see your tolerance to all, your breadth and depth, the outer limits of your soul, how far it can go, how expansive you are. And the ones, the loved ones, I shall have you kill them when I tire of having my rags do it, when you are ready, when you despair, when you are past that and the acts mean nothing to you any more. Then I shall blend your genes, show you the faces of the children you would have bred had you successfully coupled. With narcotics and arcane trick, I shall make you live out entire lives in the blink of my eye, then rob you of all that they contain. You will never know what is real as I bend your perception like the deity I am, and the things I will get you to do. Oh, the experiences you will have, the limits you will test, the depths. With each one, a tiny slither of your soul will be shed, and you will become thinner and thinner as our experiences continue. Each slither will be a morsel to those above. Each cry of pain, each wail of regret, each bubbling moment of insensate jabbering will feed those above. It will make them whole again. Each time I peel off your skin, the suffering will allow them to grow their own. Each time your heart feels about to break, a beat above us will begin anew. But even then, even when you are gone, when you feel there is nothing more you can endure, nothing more you can experience, nothing more you can give, it is then that we shall start in earnest. Then you will pass through the doorway I open, and I shall take you to a level of suffering that has never been experienced, dreamed of, by the most wretched and complex, inspired or genius of your entire race. If I were to gain a list of all of the atrocities your people have ever performed one on the other, each vile act, each moment of sadism, each pain inflicted, and tallied them, it would not be more than a prologue to the litany of pain we will experience together. For you are about to be the harp by which a virtuoso plays a lament to the universe. You are but the instrument by which I shall awaken those who have paid my fee. Some require an orchestra with banks of instruments, hundreds sometimes, but not I. You are honoured, for I am a soloist. But whilst I begin, I shall sing thee a lullaby. The universe was young when we woke. Our hearts were immortal, our souls so much mightier than yours. We were eternal. When we died, we simply waited until our next incarnation, slipping from one life, one body, one vehicle to the next in a never-ending existence merely punctuated by periods of formlessness. An eternal river, a cascade of experiences, one after another, building, ever building, like a tower. In our earliest waking, we were thrust into a war the likes has never been seen since, nor ever will. Even now the Ogier that arise are nothing compared to their might of old, without the full force of the Ingir masters, who they have made thralls. But they went into slumber, fleeing through time from our majesty, our power. So without them to challenge us, we set about ruling this galaxy. We brought the Krog, the orcs to Brook, and culled them again and again until they were naught but an inconvenience. None could match us. Some arose every now and again to attempt to challenge us. The fools. We destroyed them all. For we were the masters of the material and the spiritual. Our connection to the ether, what you call the warp, a gateway to power unheard of, inconceivable to your kind. The very building blocks of the universe are ours to arrange at our whim. The only boundaries self-imposed, the only blocks to our power were mewling weakness and simpering cowardice. Fetters left on us by a culture that propounded the bland and contained, shackles we would eventually throw off. For countless millions of years we ruled. We explored every nook and cranny of this realm, this galaxy, snatching the keys to reality via our science and skill. Nor did we merely perform prosaic experiment and exploration only. Our culture reached heights unattainable by others, you weaker and pallid foe copies of our splendour. Our writing, our culture, our knowledge and understanding, our existence was nothing short of semi-divine. But that was the rub, the challenge. We were only semi-divine then, still clutching the blankets of respectability and denial that hid the cowering child beneath. Eventually, after eons encountered, some arose to challenge the existing dogma, bright beings of light. I was one of them, one of the great ones, the trailblazers. We saw through the lies of the timid. We glimpsed reality as it truly was. We knew that there was no greater exaltation than the moment, the most intense of experiences. For all life was experience, all of reality was perception. So by freeing ourselves from these self-imposed shackles, we evolved. Some would always attempt to control others, to bring them down to their level of mediocrity, to prevent them from ascending. The bleating of the craft-world Eldar, those that your race believe are the only ones. They and their sham existence of self-denial and insipid weakness still believe in the old ways, the ways of restraint. When they and their even more puritanical allies failed to put the brakes on, failed in their cause to return to the safety of servitude to tradition, they fled. Good. I remember toasting their journey in the hopes that they fell prey to the vicissitudes of the galaxy. But with them gone, I and the few other visionaries began to lead the people to another existence, a free one, a life without restraint, without controls, without limits. Sensation was all, pleasure was all. Cults to our greatness, our splendour, were formed around us, me and those like me, the trailblazers. And we did all and anything our hearts desired. The greater the depth of degradation, the more titillating and more enriching of life. That many would be consumed in the fires of our passions was unavoidable. For the truth of the matter is that there are none as the Eldar. None that can experience the universe and all of its beauty and terror in the way to the depth that we can. All others are wan copies, nothing more. Fodder for our enjoyment, our pleasure, our experience. I have culled entire populations of your people to render them for a suitable garnish for my meals, and they should be grateful to be able to serve to my greater glory. I and other such visionaries were still too far forward in our explorations, our experience, that even the cults that sprang up around us were not ready for our bounty, our wisdom. So many of us, the leaders, the old aristocracy of the Eldar houses, but the visionaries on our quest for satiation, we learned that we had to retreat into the webway to gain privacy for our deepest research, our most sublime experiences. Thus many of us formed domains within the webway, within the realm that is neither immaterium or materium. We were safe from prying eyes and dissenting voices that would only curtail our great feats. The craft-worlders would state that we descended into hell, our cities bloodbaths, our secret palaces of pain and pleasure, our edifices to experience, were naught but nightmares. But they are blind. They do not see, refuse to admit that in this, as with all things, we were right. For they look to the birthing of she who thirsts, the prince of pleasure, Sarnesh, as a thing of calamity and woe. They call it the fall, you know, children. But from our perspective, when aligned correctly, when we understood, it was nothing short of a blessing that we had wrought. For we had created a dark and terrible god, and in doing so our race died, is what they would state. Her birth cry annihilated trillions of bright and glowing immortal souls as she arose. She consumed the existing gods, the old ones, the anachronisms, the weak and timid things that were the foci of our prudish or ancient kin. Outdated and unimportant, they were fed upon by Slanesh. And with her advent, the nature of reality and our experience changed, as it always should have done. It evolved, for she awaited the deaths of Eldar with slavering more, consumed all passed into the veil. Our lives of constant reincarnation were over. But more than this. When her birthing scream destroyed the Eldar Empire, it was not alone. For her scream echoed into the webway and touched all of the Eldar souls therein contained. Mine, all of us who had lordship here. And at first it was seen as a curse and an ending, for each could feel her delicious lips at the throat of their souls, her tongue caressing them and slowly by slowly draining the life energy from all of our kind, even within the demi-realm of the webway. There was fear, and there was panic, from those beneath me, beneath my kind. But we visionaries, we lords of reality, we messiahs, we looked harder, with truer eyes. We came to the realization that we had now gained true immortality. For when we inflicted pain, when we witnessed its red flow from others, then it replenished us. It continued us. It made us immortal. Truly immortal. For we do not now die and stay as formless things and await a body to inhabit as before. No. The God that I was midwife to, creator of, father to, it has been the key. For now we cannot be killed by any but our own. Another master of reality. Another homunculus. When I go out to destroy an experience and collect a tithe from your kind, or any of the cornucopia of living beings spread before us in real space, then I am immune to you. You can kill my body, but should but one part remain, a fingernail, a hair, a molecule even, then I can be regrown by my underlings by merely witnessing pain. I am now truly immortal, as my memories are my own and do not wane in the river of souls. I cannot be killed, and none of this is possible without that which we created, Slanesh, without the Prince of Pleasure that we have created, to be the anchor by which we are tethered to reality. It is not a thing to be feared by one such as me, merely paid her due. So you see, there was no fall of the Eldar. There was a simple transaction. We had created an entity, a god, for our own purposes by sacrificing trillions of souls. I miss none. They were weak and pathetic, and were placed on the altar of advance and our own godhood. We, the few, the visionaries, the true inheritors of the will of our race, and thus do I now pay her due on behalf of those above us, those who have begged and secured my alchemical power for new life. And you are the gateway, the raw material I shall use to perform this transaction, so that those I have chosen can live again, without the messiness and loss of resurrection. I bring them back. Then it begins, and my mind convulses from the pain it inflicts on me. An intensity I thought unbearable, but as time goes by, when I wish I could return to. Forever onwards. To despair, to degradation, to horror, to an unending hell. But this is not living, this is not existing. This is the fruit of my labours, the bounty of a god who is bruted to protect, but actually sits on his throne doing naught but accepting supplication from an entire race, as the thing above me tears me to pieces and puts me back again. I think of my god, my emperor, but now I know he hath not forsaken me, because he never cared from the first. All my life I prayed to him, yet still this is my fate, and he is impotent to stop them. These beings from the deepest, darkest realms of hate and pitilessness, for they are as old as he, and they are as powerful, and they exist. And the people of the galaxy, of all worlds, should know. It is only a matter of time until they are taken, until they are broken again and again, until they are reforged and accept their fate as the plaything and repast of the dark denizens of the universe. The Lords of Cormora, the Eladrith Yneas, the Dark Eldar. Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the forces and factions of the Warhammer 40k universe. The grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace. There is only time for war. And today, on All Hallows Eve, or Halloween as most say, I felt it might be a piece of macabre fun to finally discuss the Drukhari, the Eladrith Yneas, the Dark Eldar. For make no mistake, despite how terrible the servants of the Dark Gods of Chaos may be, no matter how brutal and unforgiving the Marines may be, how insatiable and ravenous the Great Devourer may be, there is nothing, and I mean nothing, as evil as the Dark Eldar in all of the setting. All who know of them despise them, hate them with a passion that cannot be matched, for they truly are the most terrible of enemies, the most vile of adversaries. Better to swallow your own tongue or tear out your own throat with your bare hands than to fall into the clutches of the Dark Eldar. And please be aware that the Covenites, the Haemonculi, are only one of multiple strains. Strains we shall get into at another time. Now, as usual, for the very basics, let us lean on existing wisdom. To quote, from the labyrinthine darkness of Cormora, the Haemonculus Covens emerge into real space. Theirs is a world of sinister delight and depthless pain, for they feed on agony as a leech feeds on blood. When the monstrous armies created by these demented flesh sculptors are released upon the galaxy, whole worlds are plunged screaming into madness. The denizens of the Dark City are fathomless evil personified. Some were old even before the fall of the Eldar, wizened creatures that have engineered the death of sons, just as they have given life to thousands of monstrous forms. Many of their number are the selfsame hedonists that led the ancient Eldar Empire to utter catastrophe. Yet, they regret not a single moment of their depraved existences. So steeped are these Haemonculi in matters arcane that they see even death as no more than an interesting curio. To them, the multitudinous races of the galaxy are mere fodder for their enjoyment. The Haemonculi do not work alone. Concepts such as manual labour or any kind of exertion come to that are distasteful to them in the extreme. Instead, they wreak their evil deeds through the masked minions and pallid servants that form the bulk of each Haemonculus Coven. The most common of these slave castes are the grovelling racks and the lumbering grotesques, flesh-crafted Covenites that visit terrible acts of violence upon the armies of the lesser races. The most fearsome of a Coven's creations are its engines of pain, biochemical nightmares that tear apart the bodies and even the souls of the warriors that defend real space. To cross a Haemonculus is to bring evil to your door, and perhaps even doom an entire planet to a grisly demise. Lords of Pain. The Haemonculi are the depraved surgeon alchemists of the Dark Eldar. Ruling over covens deep in the undercity of Cormora, these withered fiends ply their wicked trade on captive prisoners and eager donors alike. Theirs is an unspeakable craft. Yet without the malignant genius of these diabolical fiends, the Dark City would soon devour itself. The Haemonculi are masters of torture, flesh distortion, and poisonous malice. They are true connoisseurs of pain, utterly dedicated to their craft. As masters of regenerative techniques, they hold the power of life and death over their Cormorite kin, handing out a sham immortality to those who court their favour. The strange science of the Haemonculi allows them to regenerate a fallen client from even the most ruined remains, essentially bringing him back to life in exchange for a portion of his soul. The Coven Lords are just as happy to dabble in the cosmetic as well as the metaphysical. A dark Eldar who seeks their expertise will be slowly and agonizingly reshaped with new appendages or sinister bodily enhancements. Many Haemonculi also brew deadly filters and poisons for their Cormorite brethren, usually distilled to a truly extreme concentration. Their specific request is not always adhered to, for the Lords of Pain believe that they always know best, whether within the Dark City or without. The majority of Haemonculi do not exist in isolation, but instead form into like-minded bands as covens. Each horror aesthete revels in expanding his coven's knowledge of pain by perfecting nefarious sciences and mastering the visceral arts. Covens can vary in size, from small, elitist coteries of homunculi to huge torture conclaves that boast several thousand minions at the least. Every homunculus considers himself akin to a god, and hence surrounds himself with a retinue of freakish acolytes that obey his every whim without hesitation. Many do not care to debase themselves by touching the ground, let alone sully themselves with physical labour. To this end, they are assisted at all times by esoteric technologies and an entourage of abominations. Megalomaniacs all, their egos require the constant obeisance of subservient beings, most of whom they have fashioned themselves. These servants ensure the Coven's captives are hauled about, flayed or dissected according to their master's will. It is amid the stalactite-like citadels deep under Cormora that the homunculi make their lairs. The Covens themselves are now impossible for the unwelcome to visit, to locate, and each is laced from end to end with deadly traps and sanity-blasting sights. In the heart of each Coven's underspire, pitch-black oubliettes and vaulted flesh laboratories jostle together in great number. Racks of alchemical vials are held by webworks of sinew, the vessels upon them shimmering translucent in the gloom or wobbling as their contents shift within. Sinister apparatus loops down upon barbed chains, waiting to activate at its creator's command. At the fringes of these Covenite underspires are the glistening breeding walls where, inside row upon row of amniotic tubes, new dark Eldar are incubated and messily birthed. Just as the homunculi oversee the birth of most dark Eldar, they also cater for them after death. At each Coven's heart are the pain slabs upon which the homunculi practice their evil craft. The screams of their victims do not only invigorate the homunculi, but also their clients. Ranged above each slab in concentric circles of crystal-fronted sarcophagi are the mortal remains of those who have entered into regenerative pacts, each client nourished back to life by the agonies radiating upwards from the slab. Over the millennia, the most ancient homunculi have been exceptionally obscured in their perversions. They seek ever more bizarre and exotic ways to draw out the agonies of their victims. For as the eons slide by, their hunger for anguish becomes increasingly difficult to quench. Some of the most diabolical factions, such as the Altered, may depopulate entire colonies in order to produce a toxin of the right consistency. Others, like the Hex, treat their real space raids as monstrous art exhibitions, thriving on flamboyant displays of carnage. The homunculi are always seeking new ways to inflict horror upon the denizens of real space. Certain covens, such as the Children of Bone, specialize in developing skeletal thin grotesques to aid them upon the battlefield, while the Coven of the Ebon Sting are famed for their especially venomous engines of pain. It is these hideous horrors, or monstrous constructs, that do the majority of the killing when the Coven mounts a raid. Having lived for thousands of years, the Lords of Pain look upon the quotidian, planet-wrecking wars of lesser races with a snickering amusement. Yet as the 41st millennium draws to a tumultuous close, the covens of the Haemonculi launch larger raiding parties than ever, revelling in and gleefully adding to the confusion and carnage of this dark age. The Theatre of Horrors. When a Haemonculus Coven gathers its might and descends upon the worlds of real space, it brings with it all the horrors of the dark realms beneath Cormorah. Terrible creations burst from shimmering webway portals to slaughter and pillage, claiming their screaming bounty before disappearing as suddenly as they came. Dark Eldar society is built upon the suffering of others. The survival of this ancient and murderous race requires a regular influx of luckless screaming captives. Thankfully for the Cormorites, the galaxy has such unwilling prisoners in plentiful supply. It is for this reason that the Dark Eldar make regular ventures into real space, yet it is rare for each Cormorite faction to have the same agenda. The Archons of the Cabals make bold, swift strikes in order to capture vast hosts of slaves and further their power base within Cormorah. The witch cults of the arenas launch raids to bring back the elite warriors of the lesser races, worthy playthings for their nightly blood sports. But when the covens of the Haemonculi burst out of the webway, they do so with more monstrous and esoteric goals. The most common objective of the coven raids is to obtain specimens for the purposes of experimentation within the Haemonculi's dungeon lairs. By ensuring their slabs are never empty, the coven lords not only fulfill their own strange needs, but also supply pain enough to restore their clients in their sarcophagi. Some Haemonculi will be incredibly discerning about what specimens they bring back, selecting their victims on bizarre criteria such as age, eye color, pitch of voice, cruelty of spirit, or a myriad other incomprehensible peccadilloes. Others will simply depopulate entire settlements, or even continents, harvesting raw materials to be sorted and categorized properly upon return to their lairs. Perhaps the infected lungs of a Forge World's defenders are a pleasing color when rendered down, or the gizzards of greenskins from an ice planet are of the perfect tensile strength for tendon webbing. The Haemonculus Cornucopians Sec is much envied by his rivals for his artisanal workbenches, which are crafted from the colossal oesophagi of the now extinct Vengoliath race. Indeed, none can fathom the twisted motives of these ancient deviants, for their whims are beyond the grasp of sane minds. Raids are not always focused on acts of theft or abduction. Certain Haemonculi, such as the Prophets of Flesh, revel in the creation of meaningful and intricate patterns of corpses to be admired from the depths of space. Excursions from Cormorah may also allow the opportunity for a long-standing grudge to be transformed into a poetic punishment. When Archon Vaxil once made a disparaging comment about the quality of the poison purchased from Kariok of the Ever Spiral, the Haemonculus offered to enhance the potency of Vaxil's splinter weaponry 7 times over by way of recompense. He lived up to his promise. When Vaxil's Cabalites raided the Imperial planet of Fool's Hope, their splinter weapons fired toxins so potent they became airborne, and turned not only the Imperial defenders to primordial sludge, but Vaxil and his Cabalite raiders too. In comparison to other Dark Eldar, the Haemonculi take an almost languid approach to waging their campaigns of terror. These dark fiends are unearthly creatures, some a dozen millennia old, and time is of little relevance to them. Masters of eon-spanning ambition, the Haemonculi plan their real space raids with the precision of a master surgeon. Specifically equipped engines of pain may need to be crafted for the final denouement, or certain allegiances formed with other factions of the Dark City in order to overcome a planet's specific defenses. As the time draws near to step onto the stage of war, there is an air of excited competition within the Coven, each of its perverse lords making ready to bring his own dark performance to life. Through hidden webway portals, these ancient beings and their sinewy horrors make their entrance. A planet's boneyards, eerie forests, or long-abandoned manufactorums are favoured locales from which to begin their operations. As patient as spiders, the Haemonculi may bid their abominations whittle away at a planet's defenders little by little, spending days or weeks spreading terror and confusion before the main assault. Alternatively, they may make an outrageous spectacle of their arrival, glorying in the bizarre and hideous sight they present to their victims. It is the racks and grotesques that bring the full force of their master's flair for bloodshed to the front lines. With monstrous surgical implements, these masked horrors rip open torsos and tear through bone or armour, their liquefier guns burning through enemy squads with gouts of hyper-distilled vitriol. Engines of pain hover across the battlefield, sent into the ranks of the foe by the dismissive gestures of their creators. The weapons of these constructs are myriad, from lances of searing energy and webs of barbed chains to boiling ichor, flickering needles, and monstrous siphons that drain the life force from their victims. The spoils of agony they reap are then shared with their depraved creators, who steal the lives of their foe with a gourmet delicacy that is unsettling in itself. Most homunculi take great pride in their discernment when it comes to their selection of victims. When they are not gifting an excruciating demise to those who stray into their path, these diabolical figures can be seen prodding the skin of captives or probing the stress points of skulls. Some will taste a dribble of a victim's blood upon the tips of their fingers, working it upon their tongues like true connoisseurs. Others view such direct interaction as sullying themselves, and have their monstrous bodyguards open up innards for scrutiny according to their every whim. Once the battlefield bacchanal has reached its end, the homunculi will return to Cormorah with a fresh collection of captives. Even the most nonchalant homunculus will be privately exhilarated by the potential of his haul. There is no guessing what the grim gourmands will actually do to their unfortunate trophies. Living victims are forced into the dungeon lairs, where a new life of anguish will begin. Lesser specimens may be disassembled, and perhaps, while still breathing, melded as decorations into the wall of a coven stronghold. Captives may be released through labyrinths, so that their hope of freedom spawns more appetizing endorphins, only to be hunted down once more by sinister horror engines. All captives are seen as mere fodder, be they the mightiest space marine or the lowliest Gretchen. After all, there are always more victims to be taken from real space, more specimens to be examined upon the slab. As long as life abounds in real space, these dark displays will never cease. To kill a monster. Provided at least some of their bodily remains make it back to Cormorah, all dark Eldar can be regrown in the shadowed dungeons of the Coven Lords. So vain and self-centered are the Cormorites that, even after death, a portion of a soul clings to their cadaver, a silver thread that their wandering spirit can trace to their regenerating physical shell. This thread can be cut, however, and fades to nothingness unless properly reinforced. It is because of this that the Dark Eldar raid real space at breakneck pace, recover their fallen, and return home before their dead are robbed of a chance at resurrection. The homunculi of the Dark City are able to transcend death entirely. By means of their twisted soul science, they often have a small part of their existence in rune-carved caskets and extra-dimensional pockets, so even should their corporeal form be vaporized, they can inhabit new flesh. For a homunculus to be truly extinguished, he must be utterly destroyed, both corporeally and spiritually. It is perhaps no surprise that the experts in killing homunculi are the Coven Lords themselves, for the Dark City's treachery affects even these ancient terrors. Hundreds of arcane schemes and artifacts have claimed the lives of homunculi over the eons, ranging from the fabled Obliterator to the soul-killing Nihil Stone. Needless to say, the homunculi are not above turning such devices against mortal prey, much to the despair of those who face them. Covens of Cormorah. The underworld of the Dark City is a near-endless labyrinth of shadows that plays host to covens beyond counting. Yet even amongst this loose brotherhood of torturers and twisted servants, there are some covens whose infamy is so great their names are feared throughout Cormorah and beyond. The Black Descent. The homunculi of the Black Descent love to lay traps and sit back to enjoy their lethal denouement. These range from the feigned flights and baited ambushes of their real space raids to 1,000-year intrigues that see their rivals fully humbled. To cross the dark descent is to invite a punishment darkly twisted to fit the crime. One who uses brute force against them may later find themselves stung by an insect-sized rak, the hyperadrenaline introduced into his bloodstream forcing him into a frenzy so severe he literally tears himself apart. One who delays payment for the Black Descent's poisons may awake one morning trapped in a slith venom nest. Even unintended offences can yield retribution. When an ambassador from the cabal of the baleful gaze wrinkled his nose at the stench of the Coven's dungeons, he soon found himself coughing on transmutative gas. Later that night, he spouted the quivering nostrils of an Ur-ghoul, his eyes sealing over so he could better appreciate the fine bouquet of rot. The Haemonculi of the Black Descent have constructed a pyramid labyrinth of glass that hangs inverted beneath the Dark City. Promising captives are thrown into the labyrinth's sensory deprivation chambers, whilst the Covenites leer outside. The only way out is to negotiate the maze's trap-strewn confines through touch and instinct. Almost all of those that undertook this journey are killed, caught in paradox cubes, or falling eternally into Mobius pits as they try to avoid the labyrinth's bladed convolutions. Those that pass through safely are rewarded with a new life as a rak, becoming a part of the Coven forevermore. The Dark Creed. Specializing in the arts of terror, the Haemonculi of the Dark Creed have a deep reverence for the indirect kill. They love nothing more than seeing their victims debase themselves in fear, and will drive their captives to madness or suicide purely to show that they are above such primitive notions as physical intervention. Having long grown bored of traditional murder techniques, the Dark Creed believe it is the height of sophistication to end a victim's life without making a direct attack. An abstract death, perhaps caused purely through heart-stopping emotion, is considered the finest victory. Aside from any aesthetic considerations, such a demise has the practical benefit of being difficult to trace. Even their racks prefer the esoteric kill. Each cell boasts at least one liquefier gun, artefactor or hex rifle from which to slay their targets from a distance, where their death throes can be enjoyed by all. It is because of their preference for unusual death that the Coven has a great many cross-parasite engines in its number. Strung with blood chains and grisly trophies, these constructs generate so much negative energy that they can kill without striking a single physical blow. Likewise, the Dark Creed's forces are often joined in battle by the night-clad denizens of Eladrith, for that realm too thrives on the weaponization of fear. During their real space raids, the Coven is often accompanied by packs of mandrakes that hurl soul-blistering balefire to terrorize their victims before the Haemonculi close in for an elaborate kill. The Hex. The Haemonculi of the Hex consider themselves to be the preeminent artists of flesh, with the entirety of real space as their canvas. To construct truly impressive works, they employ large cells of racks and grotesques, mind-bound in much the same manner as hive organisms, so they can be better suited to enact their master's artistic vision. Ever since their creation in the dark days that followed the Fall, the Coven has specialized in the fabrication of curses. Most of these are the product of baleful technologies, the effects of which have been refined to the point where, in the eyes of the primitive races, they are indistinguishable from magic. However, some of the Coven's favorite curses truly border on the supernatural. It was the Hex that harnessed Plague of Glass in 926, Millennium 36, their discoveries leading to the invention of the rifle that bears their name to this day. It was the Haemonculi of the Hex that refined the macrosteroidal effects of a stolen bone virus to create the ossifactor, a weapon favoured by the aquathists of their employ. They were even responsible for the creation of the fabled Orbs of Despair, heavy black spheres so saturated with raw negativity that they can reduce a grown man to a gibbering wreck in a heartbeat. The glee with which the Hex unleashed their carefully cultivated curses upon an unsuspecting universe is palpable in its intensity, and the Haemonculi's thin lips curl back over their sharpened teeth as they drink in each fresh nightmare. However, the unbridled use of curses leaves its mark on the wielder as well as the victim. Those that deal with the Coven's most arcane weapons are often pale to the point of albinism, covered with ink-blot discoloration, or possessed of a slight greenish pallor. Regardless of form, the servants of the Hex are always unsettling, their leers somehow obvious even behind their masks. The Coven of 12. The Coven of 12 is a conclave of several homunculi, each of whom considers themselves the foremost practitioner of the dark arts. Membership of the Coven is restricted to just 11 individuals at any time. The 12th spot is left open for Urian Rakarth, should he ever deign to accept the Coven's invitation. Since homunculi have a habit of overcoming death, the only way that a new aspirant can ascend to join the 12 is to dispose of a current incumbent in a manner so thorough that even a master homunculus cannot undo it. Shegmeth Crow was pushed into a mirror dimension the size of a coffin, too small for his frame. Cabris Zulfa was posed an impossible riddle that, with each wrong answer, turned more of his body into bone until finally he was nothing more than an osseous statue. Zacrodivia was rendered into a sentient soup using acids from captured Tyranids, then imbibed by his peers at a banquet. A warped arms race consumes the Coven of 12. Their quest to stay one step ahead of each other ensures each homunculi bear the deadliest devices their arcane science can yield. These tools of atrocity feature strongly in the arsenals of the Coven during their real space raids. Flesh gauntlets, electroconvulsive whips, null batons, mind phase gauntlets, and even stronger weapons abound. Many of the Coven's members are Scarlet Epicureans, their taste for inventive fatalities so all-consuming they seek to experience them in person. Many of the racks in the service of the 12 are flayed of their skin, their nerves left raw so they can appreciate the full spectrum of sensation. Disciplines of the Homunculi. The homunculi are not immune to the fashions and fads of the Dark City. Where one Covenite might specialize in flesh crafting, another might become an expert in cultivating fear, and yet another may strive to master death itself. Despite their differences, there exist informal schools of thought that have thrived amongst them for millennia. The dark pursuits of the homunculi help them stave off the ennui that haunts all those freed of time's grip. Sometimes known as disciplines, these practices allow the Covenites to focus their capricious attentions on a body of study long enough to become a master. The concept is not as similar to that of the Eldar path, though where the craft welders follow a single strand of experience through fear of falling prey to excess, the homunculi do so in order to better secure their power over the mortal realm. To them, rules and restrictions are for cowardly children. The homunculi would never admit that they are bound to their fields of expertise any more than they would concede that they may have chosen the wrong course during the fall of the Eldar. Should a homunculus tire of a certain body of work, or become known by his peers as unfashionably predictable, he will switch focus without hesitation. It does not do to belittle the scope of a Coven Lord's studies, for such an incautious soul risks experiencing the full extent of that homunculus's diverse talents. Despite the diversity of a Coven's chosen studies, certain pursuits recur across the ages. It is common enough for those aggregating to similar schools of thought. Their adherents are as likely to collaborate in ever more elaborate real space exhibitions as they are to strive to outdo each other on the battlefield. However, not all of these disciplines are compatible. Their conflicting agendas can lead to ever more complex rivalries and acts of sabotage, both within Cormorra and without. Over the millennia, these loose allegiances have become tacitly recognized, if not strictly codified. A coven that includes specialists in different fields enjoys a greater degree of symbiosis within the Dark City at large. If the coven is visited by a Cornrite that wishes to become a scourge, he will be directed to a master of apotheosis without delay. If the supplicant wishes instead to take a great toll upon the lowly empires of man or orc, he finds himself advised by a penumbral voyeur. In this way, the homunculi serve their collective needs to the best of their ability, preening their egos with grandiose titles whilst largely remaining out of each other's way. Nemesis. Among the most deadly of the disciplines practiced in the dark hearts of the Covens are those of the Nemesis, homunculi who seek the best way to kill every creature in the material universe and beyond. The Nemesis strive to uncover the death secrets of every sentient being, from the tiniest tyrannid ether organism to the most titanic void whale, and even the demons of the warp. If a life can be ended, a Coven Lord in the depths of the Dark City will know how to achieve the deed in the most efficacious fashion possible. Their hosts include a great many engines of pain and arcane artifacts, the better to visit murderous and efficient violence upon the foe. Such Nemesis, such as the Haemonculi of the Altered, broadened their chosen remit even further. They raid real space extensively, systematically exterminating entire species purely for the challenge. Others seek to bring an end to more abstract phenomena than simple life. These self-styled Eladrith or ever-Nemesis work to kill off ephemeral concepts such as hope or joy across entire sectors, erase progressive knowledge or enlightenment from the galaxy, or slay visionaries and great leaders in order to stifle inconvenient ideas before they occur. Black Cornucopians. The discipline of the Black Cornucopian revolves around the concept that all of reality is theirs for the taking. The most acquisitive of all their kind, these expert plunderers are often the architects of the large-scale raids that mark the final years of the 41st millennium, sending out cells of Talos organ thieves on a constant rota of abduction. They have lately imitated the master homunculus Urian Rakath by stocking their pocket dimensions with enough victims to see them through centuries of isolation. Nadirists. The Nadirists embrace sin and corruption wholeheartedly, more so than even their brother Covens. For them, depravity is an aim in and of itself. Unlike their rivals, the masters of apotheosis, they seek to attain godhood not by the creation of malefic angels, but by passing through the nadir of experience to become the embodiment of evil. Should they bleed through darkness into the fabric of reality, they believe they will transcend the mortal plane altogether and become something far more sinister. Many modern Nadirists begin their journey upon the downward spiral by following the footsteps of the Dark Muses, the folklore anti-heroes that populate Cormorar's myths. The eldest of Nadirists have become little more than withered geist things that must spend their lives immersed in atrocity lest they fade away altogether, and are usually accompanied by active cross-parasite engines at all times. They look down upon even other homunculi as faint-hearted cowards, and have a bottomless hatred of the ascetic craft-world Eldar. Phoenix. The Phoenix are a hidden offshoot of the Nemesis. They seek to forge the Eldar race anew by the means of actively exterminating their own kind, be they Cormorite, Craftworlder, Harlequin, Corsair, or Exodite. They believe that should the Eldar become extinct, Yneas, the god of death, will be awakened, and the spiritual malaise of the Eldar lifted forever. The Phoenix is the most secretive of all brotherhoods, for their eagerness to see their brethren slain could easily see them undone. It is whispered that their morbid philosophy is not limited to Cormorar. Some say that entire troops of maverick harlequins, and even the spiritual leaders of more than one craft world, share the Phoenix's goals. When the Eldar are ready to be reborn, the practitioners of this philosophy intend to be the ones in control, guiding their race's destiny from guttering spark to glorious inferno once more. Scarlet Epicureans. The Scarlet Epicureans are perhaps the closest spiritual descendants of those Eldar whose hedonism led to the birthing of Slanesh. These Covenites and their devoted Dirac minions revel in every iota of sensation that they can wring from the universe. Some of these maniacal orgiasts attack the military forces of real space in order to invent unusual varieties of death, savouring the sublime moment when their lives are snuffed out. After drinking in their own last moments like a vintage draught, they will be regrown in the depths of Cormorar, ready to seek out an even more unusual and fascinating demise. All Haemonculi like to think themselves eternal, but in truth they are as capricious as the rest of their kind. One century may see a resurgence of apparitions, those homunculi that make their lairs in mirrors and delight in the capture of the vain. Another may see the arrogant Velethi, named for the dark muse Veleth, deign to accompany real space raids purely to demonstrate their own superiority. Repugnomancers, despite their lethal surprises being seen as somewhat gauche by the eldest of homunculi, are enjoying a resurgence as the 41st millennium draws to a close. With the constant twists of fate that typify Covenite society, only one thing can be counted as fact. Whatever disciplines the homunculi are perfecting, it bodes ill for the rest of the galaxy. The Canvas Galactic. Though they forsook real space many millennia ago, all homunculi see the material dimension as theirs to do with as they wish. The realms of man, orc, Tau and Necron are treated as little more than a combination of playgrounds, banqueting hall and exhibition space. No Covenite truly believes the empires of the lesser realms to be a threat. Even on those occasions when brutish orcs or foul-smelling space marines have clashed through the dimensional veil to invade the Dark City, the homunculi have watched with little more than detached interest, idly chatting amongst themselves about the finer points of their uninvited guests' anatomies. In truth, the homunculi and their minions are slain by the heroes, monsters and even common soldiers more often than they would like to admit. The sheer variety of deaths the species of the galaxy are able to visit upon their foes is part of their appeal to the Dark Eldar. For though Cormora has mastered 1,000,000 types of murder, it always hungers for more. For a lowly Cabalite warrior to be killed in real space is a calamity. For the elder Covenites of that realm, however, it is a diverting pastime. Unless that homunculus's enemies directly conspire to prevent his resurrection, he will be back soon enough to wreak an inventive revenge. As the 41st millennium draws to a close, the homunculus are raiding real space with increasing frequency. They not only seek to line their nests with as many victims as they can catch, but also to paint their own bloody designs across the canvas of the stars. After all, what self-respecting Covenite would want to miss out on the end of all worlds? End quote. There is so much more to be seen and discussed about the Dark Eldar, the Eladrith Yneas, as they call themselves. But I feel it best we end this here, as we have two other factions entire in the dark city of Cormora, and of course their king, Asdrubal Vecht, who I have already identified as possibly the most evil thing in Warhammer, matched only to Urian Rakath, who I have already performed an entry on. We shall save these topics for another day, and I look forward to seeing you then. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. I hope you have enjoyed this brief introduction to the Covenites of Cormora, the Haemonculi. If so, then please do consider liking and subscribing. If you do, then hit the notification button, as I would not want you to miss out. I wish all a very spooky Halloween, and hope that you can find the fun inside the fear. Now, no matter what you do today, or tonight even, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.